In 30 seconds, you will be witness to one of the greatest online events in the history of, well, online events. Descript proudly brings to you a topic that you deeply care about and whose name is the title of this online event. I'm Don. I am not your host. I am an overdub stock voice included for free with Descript. So, now, let's meet someone who actually works here.
Hello and welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are in the world. Thanks for joining us for this Descript webinar where we're going to talk about summits. I'm Jack, and this is my co-host Harmony, stepping in for Jay, your regularly scheduled host. But the good news is we get the distinct pleasure of talking to Jenn from Sell with the Summit about virtual summits. So let's get it started maybe with a question. It's been a year of mostly online life. What are some online events that you've attended that have been really well done? There's a lot of maybe dull meetings or Zooms that go too long or things that maybe you didn't really appreciate that much. That's not the case with Jenn's summits, but love to know a little bit about that. I know for me, one thing I did that was fun, virtual wine tasting. It was great. We had they sent us all the little bottles of wine. The sommelier talked us through everything. I thought that was a lot of fun. Love to know. Let's maybe start there. Let's go around the room. Anything else you guys have done that has been really fun? Harmony, you want to start?
Let's see. I did something similar, a wine tasting with some girlfriends that I went to college with. I didn't expect it to go so well, but yeah, it was great. Everyone kind of went around. They, said what their favorites were. We paired it with some food. Yeah, it was a good time.
Yeah, Jenn. Other than your summits, you can't pick something that you host, but one thing maybe you thought was really well done.
I've really liked some of the new stuff that I've seen come out. Like, I don't know if anyone's heard of Air Meet, but that's been a really cool one. It essentially lets you sit down at virtual tables and talk to people about different topics. And it has a bit more of like the conference feel versus just hanging out on Zoom. So
it can be a bit of a challenge if you do it many hours a day. Yeah. Well, that's great. Good place to start. So I'd love to, Jenn, maybe turn it over to you. Introduce yourself. You host online summits, and you're going to show us a little bit about how you use Descript to produce the absolute best online summits possible. But I'd love for you to just introduce yourself, kind of learn a little bit about why summits are a good solution and why Descript has fit in to your workflow.
Yeah, so I'm Jenn. I run Virtual Summit Search, of which Sell with a Summit is a subset. So over there, we work with summit hosts and speakers to help make summits even better. And Sell with a Summit came about because my last edition, I co-hosted it. And so my co-host and I had seen that we started planning it right before COVID hit. And as we started really getting into the planning right as COVID hit, we realized summits are a really good way for people to build their businesses, to grow their audience and everything. We wanted to get the word out there. So I like summits because they're as close as we can get to in-person conferences right now, pretty much. So they give you a chance to get to know the speakers, the hosts, the other attendees, and you get to learn things. We do giveaways in our summit. So there's all sorts of really fun stuff you can do with summits. And they're really fun and engaging, and I just like hanging out in them. So
Yeah. How did you get started in this business or thinking about this as a solution?
So I've been speaking at summits since 2015. So I was invited to speak at some summits back then, and I just kind of kept going. And Virtual Summit Search started because I was working with a business friend, and we both realized we keep hearing about summits after they happen, and we want to speak at more of them. So we kind of created it as a solution to that, so that people can find the summits to attend before they happen. Speakers can get found. I have a lot of hosts who go through the speaker directory to find their speakers and everything. So it just kind of came about organically because there was a need there. So, yeah.
And in prepping for your summits, what type of content are you usually putting together? Is it video? Is it audio, presentations, or a mix?
Yeah, so it's typically video. I give my speakers the option to either do solo recorded presentations. I always do pre-recorded because I hate the tech aspect of it when everything goes wrong, because I've been part of summits where that's happened, and it's a mess. So they can do a solo pre-recorded episode. They can do an interview. They can use slides. They can not use slides. Some of them do screen shares. Like, I try to give them the chance to get as creative as they want to with that, whatever is most comfortable for them. And then in this summit, I'm actually repurposing the audio. I'm doing a private audio feed so that people can both watch the videos and listen to the audio. So that's been really fun. But yeah, just kind of repurposing it. I use Descript to go and do like the little audiogram snippets and everything to share. So yeah, I try to do a little bit of everything with them to kind of meet everybody where they're at.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about us, a little bit about Descript. How are you using Descript? How'd you find out about us, and how did you begin incorporating that into your workflows?
Yeah. So I've been in and out of the podcasting space for the past few years, and my husband just started one last year. And I honestly don't know exactly how he heard about it, but at one point he was like, "You've got to hear about this, like check out this Descript thing. They do visual editing. So like you edit the transcript instead of the audio." And I was like, "I've tried stuff like that. It doesn't work as well as it says it does." And he was like, "No, you have to try it." And I did. And I was like, okay, never mind. I'm never, ever going back to using Audacity ever again. Because it made it so much easier. It saved me hours. I don't even know how many hours of time it saved, but I can edit my podcasts and my summit content in what feels like no time. So yeah, I've never looked back.
Well, you got a trusted referral, and you have been using it ever since. So that's a success story in my mind. So we got a question. Yeah, this is, I think, great for maybe you to talk through, Jenn. What platforms do you recommend for these virtual events? I know we talked a little bit about AirMeet, but maybe what are your best practices, or platforms you recommend?
Yeah, so I personally host mine on WordPress. I've already got a WordPress site, so I'm familiar with it. I'm used to using it. So I have a little bit of a tech stack. I've got like WordPress. I use ThriveCart for my cart processor and all that kind of stuff. And then I use LearnDash and Wishlist Member to manage the actual all access pass side. But I also know people who use Kajabi, they use Hey Summit, they use if you have a platform already, see if it works. Figure out exactly what you want to have in your summit, how you want it to function. And if your platform works, stick with it. There's no need to add something new if you don't have to.
Yeah, it seems like we've tried out a few. It seems like every week there's maybe a new one to take a look at. How is the process, particularly these virtual summits, or what does the growth arc look like over the past year? Obviously, a lot more people are doing these virtual events than ever before. By necessity. So, how has that kind of changed things, or just be curious your perspective on that?
I mean, there's been a lot of options that have come out. Some of them are better than others. So I haven't personally tried many of them. I've seen people who've used them. Stuff like AirMeet has come out, and I'm planning to use AirMeet possibly as part of the summit, but not the main one. So it really depends on the audience, especially when in terms of the community side of things. So like if your community is on Facebook a lot, use Facebook as the community group and then host the summit, like the content elsewhere. But if your audience isn't on there, then you can find something else. Maybe you do host it all in AirMeet and everybody's in there. And so it's kind of experimenting, and everybody's really ramping things up with COVID because they've seen a lot more people. They've got more capital now. They've been able to hire more people. So some things are improving in leaps and bounds. And so just kind of, if there's something that you've tested and it didn't work, maybe it works now. Who knows? So
yeah, that's we even get some people that come to us and say that, so well, great. What about you and your growth plans for your summits ahead? Anything that our viewers should know about, or what are you planning?
So I'm launching the next one next week on Monday. So right now that's my main focus. But after that, we're doing a summit for speakers specifically. So how to use other people's. Normally we talk about how to host your own virtual summit to grow your business and all that kind of thing. But the next one, we're actually going to talk about how to use other people's summits to grow your business. And from there, sky's the limit. I haven't decided what the one after that will be, but I like experimenting so I can share things with my audience. So testing out things like AirMeet, doing private communities, things like that, are some things I'm thinking about doing. Just making it more interactive is the main thing for me.
Great.
And Jenn, I'd love to learn a little bit more about post-summit. How are people staying connected? How are they sharing best practices? I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah. So I try to stay in touch via email afterwards. I do a Facebook group community for my summits right now. I'm going back and forth on switching that out. But so after the summit's over, I leave it open until the cart closes, and then I close the Facebook group down, and I have a friend who runs a Facebook group for summit hosts. So I send them over there and keep hanging out with them there. And I just kind of leave the doors open, like ask me questions and that type of thing to kind of just keep the conversation flowing and keep them engaged. And then after the summit's over, I also make it evergreen so people can still access it afterwards. They just sign up. They get a limited amount of time to watch the videos. And so they don't get the community aspect, but they can still get the education aspect of it.
Yeah. Nice. Well, that sounds great. I think now we've talked about a lot, but it's time, Jenn, we got to put you on the spot and let's see how you're using Descript.
Absolutely.
Either in advance, during, after. Let's start wherever you'd like to start.
Okay.
And take it away.
All right. So I've got some of my presentations preloaded into Descript. So this is kind of what it looks like when I load them in. This is my opening session for this version of the summit. And so this one is just slides. And like I said, I give my speakers the options of how they want to do that. So this particular speaker decided to do just the slides, no talking head or anything like that. So I'll get it transcribed, and then with the ones where they have a talking head, I try to edit it less, just because if you're taking out all the uhs and ums and so it looks so choppy. So I love these ones because it's really easy to edit those and make sure that they actually flow better. But a lot of people prefer to use the talking heads and stuff just for personalities. So I'll just usually go in and start editing, which I haven't done fully everything in the new version where you use the E. I'm used to the older version where you do Control E. But I'll go in and typically I'll start editing the transcript. So just kind of correcting some things here and there. Stuff like that. And then I'll go and I'll start looking for those filler words. So going and pulling that out because we don't need that. And so then I really love how Descript makes it sound natural. So
starting out, you will learn
can't even tell that there was ever a word there. So that is one of the things I really love about Descript, is it makes it easy to make your speakers sound really good, which is always my goal. You want to make your speakers the stars of the summit. And so if I can make them sound good, if I can cut out all the words where maybe they didn't sound as good as they wanted to, or they said and then had to try to remember what they were going to say, if I can take that out, I always try to do that. So typically I just go through and edit that, look for places where something doesn't fit, or maybe they repeated themselves. And so like down here, had some extra stuff in there, an extra me there. So maybe I'd take that out. And just going and seeing where we can improve that. And then once I've edited all of the transcript, made it look the way I want it to, then I go in and I add my intro and outro. So not everybody does this for summits. I like to, just because it adds a little bit more personality, lets everyone know they're in the right place and all that. So drag in my intro if it decides to cooperate. There we go. And I'll just pull that up to the beginning of it. And this bit is extra and doesn't need to be there. And then I like to fade mine in and out so that it doesn't run over that. So then,
hello and welcome to.
If I get to the right spot.
Hello and welcome.
So, I mean, that's my basic workflow. I don't know how far you guys want me to go into all the editing and everything, but.
So do you, for all of your summit speakers, do you provide the service of editing whatever they provide you? You know, they kind of pass over the information and then you do the final polish. Is that the way that usually works?
Yeah, that's how I typically do it, because my goal is to make it as easy as possible for the speakers, because the easier it is for them, the more likely they are to actually be able to participate and promote and do all the things that are going to help them have a successful speaking experience. So with my summits, all I ask them to do is submit their recording, or if they do, so like in this case, I had an interview, so I record the interview. They don't have to do anything else. We just record it. I take care of it from there. I give them promo graphics, give them swipe copy for emails and social media and all that. I just make it as easy as possible for them. So,
what are you using to record your interviews right now, and then before you pull them into Descript and edit those?
Yeah, so I just use Zoom, because everybody uses that these days.
Easy to use. Yep.
It's simple and easy to use. It's not always my favorite, but you know, it works. So yeah.
I know you mentioned a little bit social graphics and things like that. Could we maybe dive into that a little bit and kind of how you create graphics and go about kind of supplementing, you know, whatever the speaking topic of conversation might be? Yeah,
so I try to keep it pretty simple with the graphics. I make a few different usually about 3 different versions of each speaker specific graphic. So like I'll have their picture on there, I'll have their name and the title of the presentation, and it's just like a different color of the background, so they can pick whichever one fits best with their brand. And I usually just use something like Canva or Trello. Just a pretty basic, easy to use graphics editor, because I'm not a graphic designer. I don't want to have to go crazy with that. A lot of folks go and hire a graphic designer, especially if they're planning to do more than one of the same summit series, so that they can just reuse it. So that's what I did with this one, is the graphics that we created for the last one, I repurposed those so that they were easy on me, but they looked great. And so by providing those with to the speakers, it just makes it easy for them to promote and everything. And I'll do different versions of it as well. So I'll have like a square one that they can use on Instagram. I'll have a wide one they can use on Twitter or Facebook, a tall one they can use on Pinterest, or if they want to use that on the other platforms. That way they have the whole full gamut and they can just do whatever they want with it.
Are you doing something similar with your music selections? Are you just grabbing like short, 30-second clips, or where are you going for those?
So like, are you talking about the intro and outro, or? Yeah. So that one, I created that in a program called Offio, and they kind of just, they have a selection of music options in there. So I just use the same one for each of them. I don't change that one out. And yeah, it was pretty simple to use. And I, like I said, I'm not a graphic designer, so I try to keep it pretty simple for myself.
Great. And when you bring your content into Descript, are you mostly doing your edits via the text, or are you going like making any changes in the waveform? Are you like playing with the audio at all, or finessing it to get it to that final stage?
So in terms of the speakers, I tend to do most of the edits in the transcript itself, unless there's like a silence that I'll kind of trim up and then test it, see if it sounds natural. And then if it does, I leave it. If it doesn't, I play with it until it does. And because that's the main goal, is, like I said, make them look good, and sounding natural is part of that. So I try to listen to it every time I make an edit to make sure it sounds right. That because Descript's really good about cutting it at the right spot, but sometimes they've kind of whispered a couple words together or talked over themselves or something. Mm-hmm. So every once in a while, there's a little blip that I have to leave in there just because it sounds really weird otherwise. So that is one tip I would have, is always check your edits after you make them, just in case.
Great tip. What other sort of top tips might you recommend, like when bringing content in? What are some of the gotchas you've experienced?
Give yourself time to upload. Uploading always takes a little bit of time, and sometimes you're like, all right, I'm going to get in there and start working, and then you forget. You have to wait for it to upload. You need to wait for it to transcribe. And so I tend to batch them. I'll put in a whole bunch of videos and let them start working on uploading. And then as soon as one uploads, I start the transcription. So just kind of staggering them so that they all are ready one after another. And I just start on the first one that finishes. And so it takes a little bit of time if you're doing a summit. So like I had I will have 18 presentations. And so it takes time to edit them. It takes time to upload them. So just kind of give yourself some time. Make sure that you're doing that. And then let's see, what other tips would I have? I don't mess too much with the audio itself. Descript's pretty good about auto leveling once you export it. So I always export my final one from Descript itself, because it's got all the extra audio that I have in there. And so it just makes it a lot easier than trying to edit it outside of anywhere. Because I did that last year. Way easier in Descript.
Awesome.
That's the feedback we like to hear. Yeah. Jenn, you mentioned that you were thinking of replacing Facebook group, and Doug has a question. What are you considering in place of Facebook groups to kind of stimulate that community afterward, or before, during, after, keep that element in place?
Yeah. So personally, I'm looking at doing possibly Peerboard, mainly because I'm already looking at using that for my virtual summit search community. Mm-hmm. And so all I'd have to do there is create an extra like layer of the board for that particular summit. And then I could keep them in there. They could still be part of the ongoing community without having to move them somewhere else. Because Facebook's distracting. You get on there to go look at something, you get notifications, you see a new picture in the feed, and you just get distracted. So I'm looking at that. I've seen people who run it entirely off of AirMeet or something like that, where it's fully visual. I've seen people run it entirely off of Zoom. Someone did that last week, and it works great for her particular audience. So know your audience. Like, if they're not going to go to a different platform to interact, keep it on Facebook or wherever they happen to be. And so that way you're not losing out on the interactions. Like right now, my audience is on Facebook a lot. So I'm just keeping it on there, but experiment, see what people are doing, do surveys, just ask them like, hey, if I was hosting this on this other platform, would you hang out there? And figure that not everyone's going to actually follow through with what they say either. So.
Right. No, definitely that like we said a while ago, there are new tools that kind of pop up all the time. And sometimes it's hard to learn a new platform or something like that.
Yep.
So I definitely see the simplicity of being able to host your community all in the same place. That seems to make a lot of sense, or go where the traffic is going.
Yep. Yeah.
So we saw a little bit of kind of a voiceover PowerPoint or presentation, and then an interview style. Anything else that you want to show us kind of in this project? Any different types of content that really stand out or you like to present in particular?
So typically I get those two, or I get one, go to the right one. I'll get one like this where you get the slides plus the little talking head, like Zoom does. So like I said, with these types of ones, I try to, if there's an actual person on the screen talking, try to keep the actual editing down. I'll end up editing the transcript. So I'll take out all the uhs and ums and the filler words in the transcript only, but I'll leave the audio and the video alone so that it doesn't end up getting jumpy and looking clipped or anything like that. And if someone says something that I know they'd probably prefer it be taken out to make them sound better and more cohesive, I'll still take that out. But especially if they tend to have a longer one. Most people, like for my summits, I ask the presenters to do 15 to 25 minutes. And a lot of people are used to doing 30 to 45. So every once in a while, you'll have someone who goes a bit longer than you wanted. And so I tend to kind of edit a little more heavily for them. But those are the ones I typically have for a summit. When you're doing podcasts, because I also do podcasts in Descript, it's a lot easier because you just have the audio typically. So I edit a lot more heavily on those. But yeah, I mean, I try to keep it pretty minimal for summits just because, like I said, I want to keep it from clipping. Most people have their face on there for authority building and that type of thing. So yeah, I don't have a ton that I get into besides the transcript with summits. So.
You said you edit a podcast as well. Are you able to kind of realize some efficiencies, either turning maybe these presentations into a podcast or as a launching platform for a podcast, or kind of, is there any kind of cross-platform economies of scale, I guess, that you're realizing, by doing all of this in Descript?
Yeah. So one thing I'm trying to play around with this summit with is kind of taking those clips that I would use to make the audiograms and putting them all together to make a short podcast episode. So I'm probably going to be testing that out before this summit, just kind of throwing that out there, seeing if that sticks. Because it's really easy to grab pieces inside a Descript and put them into a new composition and make something brand new. So repurposing it is definitely something that I prefer to do whenever I can, just because it is easier and it's definitely economy of scale. So getting creative with the ways you use it is definitely helpful.
Yeah. Well, I know a lot of people like Descript for that, in particular for social media and for promotion. Are you using it for that? How do you like to use social media as you're kind of promoting these speakers and these topics?
I'll be totally honest. I'm not the best about being active on social media, but the way that I typically tend to try to promote for my speakers is, rather than expecting them to promote, I'll take content that makes them look good. So like the audiograms of their best tips, The graphics, I use the graphics I create for them, to be perfectly honest. I don't make extra work for myself, typically trying to make totally separate graphics, but I just tag them, and it makes it really easy for them to go and reshare that to their audience, and they don't have to make up the content. They get to show off that someone else is saying good things about them, and it just makes promotion easier for everybody. So yeah.
That's great. Use the power of their audience as well, too.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've seen a couple of different types of content. Anything else that you feel like really helps, or what is your audience most like to see from presenters? For maybe a guest of ours who, maybe you're asked to speak at a summit, maybe you're hosting a summit, maybe you're hosting one at work. What do you feel like resonates the most with your audiences?
That one actually depends on the audience too. I tried to do a feedback survey after the summit, and I've had folks say, oh my gosh, I loved the slides. It's so much easier to absorb the information. Some people say, I vastly prefer the interviews or the ones where their faces are on screen because I get to connect with them as people more. And some audiences tend to skew more one way than the other, but because then I've also had other summit hosts that I've talked to who've said the exact opposite of what my people say. So maybe most of mine say that they prefer the slides, which is typically how it is. Although this particular one, I have more interviews because it's podcasters.
Right.
So it just really depends on the audience. So that's where knowing your audience comes in handy again. But yeah, I don't think that there's a best way necessarily. It pretty much always just depends, unfortunately.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So.
This summit in particular is about podcasting.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to know what are some other topics that you've handled or other kind of audience that you've hosted summits for.
Yeah, so my last one was for course creators. So it was specifically about how to host a summit in 90 days that will help skyrocket your next course launch. So we talked about all sorts of stuff in terms of summits and improving your courses. So we had like a learning design expert on there, and then how to actually run the summit, how to integrate the summit with the course. So stuff like that. This particular summit I'm running next week, we are talking about how to improve like speaking and interviewing skills and promoting on your podcast on social media, how to create a listener journey, which is something I haven't heard anybody talk about with podcasting before. So I'm excited about that one. So just kind of trying to cover the bases so that they have a solid baseline, whether it's the podcast or the course, and then helping them figure out how to integrate with the summit to grow their audience and make more sales is typically what most people are looking for. So
right.
I've also run one in the past. The one before this, the course creator one, was for creative entrepreneurs, so like artists, photographers, and designers. And that was a completely different audience. So they preferred the slides as well. But like that one, they had very different interests and very different engagement styles. So it's been really interesting seeing the differences between audiences and all that kind of thing between different summits. So,
right. Well, that's three audiences definitely that can all kind of benefit from using Descript and yet have some very different workflows. So, interesting to think about how those.
Yeah, course creators can definitely use Descript because we tend to have a lot of videos, and I actually have someone on this particular edition of the summit where we're talking about doing audio courses. So that's another one. Descript is great for that too, because all the content, it just speeds it up so much.
Yeah.
So
well,
Jenn, for your,
I
was going to jump in. So thinking about your podcasting group of folks, Are there some common themes that typically come up? I'd like thinking about like growth places where people get stuck in podcasting. I'd be curious, like, what are some of the common questions and themes that come up?
Yeah, so a lot of the time folks struggle with the marketing side because they like to create the content, but then they put it out there and they expect people to automatically listen because it's on iTunes, well, Apple Podcasts now, but it's out there on the search directories and they get 5 downloads and they don't know quite what to do about it. They post on social media because that's what everybody says to do, and nothing really changes. And they kind of get stuck there. They want to do more with it, but they don't know where to find the audience. They don't know how to make money at it because, let's be real, sponsors these days want you to have like 10,000 downloads at least. And when you're getting 5, that's not going to happen. Even if you're getting 500, you're not going to get a sponsor. So they kind of get stuck. Some of them give up because they just don't know where to go next. And some of them just keep going, hoping that one day they'll go viral, which podcasts don't tend to do. So that's why I love using summits for it, because summits grow the audience. They get people used to buying from you because they can buy the all access pass for the replays and all that kind of stuff. And they're already interested in the topic if you're doing it around your podcast topics. So it gets them listening to the podcast afterwards. It gives it a really clear call to action for that. And you can repurpose the summit content onto your podcast, especially if you're using Descript. You can go and do it for social media too. So you get additional marketing materials that you don't have to put a bunch of extra effort into. So it's really multi-purpose. And yeah, that's a lot of folks get stuck with that. And that's kind of why I'm doing that, because it helps get over all those different hurdles.
Nice. Yeah, great points.
Well, Jen, let's have you dive back into the Descript itself. Mm-hmm. I'd love to see just kind of a fully finished piece of content, and then maybe we can like work backwards a little bit and see how you got there. And then we'll spend some time talking about publishing and where to go after that. But love to kind of just see what your end product looks like.
Yeah. Do you want me to kind of... So like they're about 20 minutes, most of them. So
yeah.
Do you want me to just play like snippets of them, or?
Sure. And unless you'd like to play the whole 20 minutes, but no, I'd love to just kind of see, what to you is done. Where do you feel like you've got it in a good place? You're ready to publish. Yeah. So, if what do you feel like is the fully baked cake and ready to go out to the audience?
Yeah. So typically the way that I look at it is between, I base it a lot of the time on the transcript since that's where I'm working. So I just kind of go through and take a look and see, like, does all of this make sense? I try to kind of play through it. I'll usually speed it up a bit just so I don't have to go through the entire thing, because that takes hours. But usually by the time I've gotten to the end of editing the transcript, I've got a pretty good idea of if I caught everything. And so I'll add in the intro and outro. I'll listen through just random snippets to make sure the audio still sounds good in all the different places. But like I said, Descript's really good about normalizing it, so that, because that was one thing when I was editing in another program for my last summit, I had folks who some of their feedback was that my intro and outro music was a lot louder than the like the actual presentation, even though I tried to normalize it in the other program. So kind of just making sure that you're not going to blow anybody's eardrums when you
always important. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I just kind of tend to do a quick overview of it and then make sure that all of my cuts sound good. So like I go and start at the beginning here, make sure that it fades in properly.
Hello.
Just so that it kind of, you're making sure that it's a good experience for the audience so that they want to keep watching or listening or whatever medium you're doing it in. And so like I also had I had some fun with of course, it was my presentation for the summit that I had messed up video with because recording it in Zoom was not great. So that one I actually edited the audio and the video in Descript because it didn't match. And there were places where it had some mistakes. So that one I had to go and mess with a lot more. So I'd take out snippets and paste the slides back in, and Descript was so much easier than my other program was last year for that. And so that one I did have to watch through pretty much the whole thing to make sure all of the cuts looked good, but just kind of making sure that the finished product looks, like I said, like a good baked cake instead of a mess of ingredients is the main thing in my book. So the nice thing about summits is that typically by the time a speaker sends you their presentation, they're pretty happy with it. Mm-hmm. If you're doing pre-recorded, if they're not, they've probably re-recorded it 3 times. So you usually get a pretty good piece to work off of. And then it's just more about kind of keeping an eye on the filler words and the spaces where maybe they forgot that they had trailed off or missed something and gone back and reset it and then forgot to clip it out or whatever it happens to be. So I always try to kind of review them before I finish them up. But typically by the time I've gotten through a 20-minute transcript, I've got a pretty good idea of if it's done or not. So I don't know if that answers the question.
No, definitely. I mean, I think it's, you're providing a service here on behalf of your speakers, to help get these things in the right place, get them, feeling confident that they can turn their maybe delightfully unrefined in some cases, presentations over to you and get them, in a cohesive fashion, because I think that's probably something important for hosting these summits, right?
Yep. Yeah, because I definitely had at least one speaker who, can we cut that out? I was like, absolutely. And when I recorded my presentation, I specifically just paused and then restarted any sections that I messed up because I knew that I could come in Descript and it'd be real easy to find those and just chop them out since I didn't put my face on most of the presentation, and it just makes it so much easier. And it makes your speakers feel comfortable because they know that you've got their back. You're going to make them look good. So.
Great. Let's talk a little bit now about, once you've got this done, you're ready to start publishing, curating, putting all this in the proper place. So we'll take that baked cake analogy and then put it out on the bakery shelf. What do you do once once your Descript projects are done, once you're ready to kind of start moving somewhere else?
Yeah, so I export pretty much everything. I export the video so that I can upload that to share it during the summit. I export the audio now so that I can put it in the private podcast feed so that folks have that option. I export the transcripts because I share that in my all access pass. I also export the subtitles because that's one of my favorite things about Descript is it saved me so much time not having to go get subtitles from an outside provider. And I upload those so that we have more accessibility for folks who may be hard of hearing or anything like that, so that they can still participate in the summit and get the same amount of value out of that. So I'll do that. And then I'll go and let's see. Well,
yeah. So let's maybe take this and show us where you go with it or what some things you do with it.
So I'll go in here and I'll do like an audiogram and change up my colors to match my my branding and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And you can change up the template. So like I prefer not that one because it moves so fast, but this is one of my favorites. And so I tend to export that one. I'll use that for social media. Sometimes I'll send it to the speakers so that if they want to use that, they can. Because they can also use that outside of the summit even. They can go and share that just as part of their social media so that it's easier for them to promote themselves later on. So I'll do that. There's just so many things you can do with it. So like Hello Audio is what I use for the private feed. So you can export it straight to that. But yeah, I'll do the text for the transcript, do subtitles that I upload along with the video, do the audio for that, or do it straight to Hello Audio, do the video. I haven't used the GIFs yet, but
That's brand new.
I know. So that's why I haven't gotten to play with it, because I was, feverishly editing transcripts and everything. But I try to use pretty much everything that I can, because there's just so much, and it makes it so much easier to just do everything with a summit, honestly. So that's part of how it saved me so much time.
Yeah. Well, that's, again, what we like to hear here. That's great. How do I remove room tone during edits? That's a good question. Maybe something that has come up, when you're editing a speaker's content. You can either if you're using our automatic room tone feature, Jen, is that something you've used or something you've realized any efficiency with?
I probably need to, especially for my own stuff, because I have my HVAC right behind me, and it tends to turn on almost every single time while I'm doing a recording.
Yeah, sounds right.
But I haven't, unfortunately, played around with that one quite yet.
Yeah, we have a if you'll go, you can close out of this, and maybe we'll use this a few minutes just to show some of the some common things, that, because I know we were talking a little bit about the transcription glossary, and not to move too far away, but I can go to actually, I believe it's the project settings and maybe file settings, preferences. There we go. So if I want to turn off room tone globally, I can turn it on. You can see you, Jen, have it on right now. So whenever I pull out, I need a little extra space on the timeline, I can grab it and pull that, and it'll create room tone for me, generated using AI. But I can just hit that toggle right there, and it'll stay off, and just the audio will drop out like you're used to. So, the good news is, Jen, maybe you have been using the room tone just without knowing it. The AI is that good.
Yeah, I've been using Descript for like a year now, and it's gotten so much better. It's been amazing. I already thought it was good.
Yeah. And one other thing that's new too is, let's show off the transcription glossary, because I think this is probably something that's really useful for, really industry specific topics as well.
My husband's podcast in there. So.
Yeah, it'll add these words to your transcription dictionary. So great way to, if you're doing a specific topic, or maybe there's a piece of software or something like that people are using, it's got a funny name or a specific spelling. Great to add that into your transcription glossary.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Anything else? Any other tricks, Jen, that you like to use or that make your editing process easier?
So one thing I do tend to do is, while I don't use the auto remove filler words, I do go in there and find, like, if I'm looking for specific ones, like, tends to be something that a lot of my speakers say, but because we're doing educational content, stuff I typically want to leave in there. So rather than just globally deleting them or whatever, I'll go in and use the filler words to find them. And if there's some that stick out to me as ones where maybe I should trim that one, it makes it so much easier to find it and then decide if you want to get rid of it. And yeah, so like, you want to leave that one in. Mm-hmm. But if it's something where they're like, so yeah, you can probably go take that out, at least either out of the transcript or out of the actual audio video files. So that's one little thing that I tend to do that maybe is not as standard, but so I do that one. And every once in a while, sometimes I'll have a speaker or a podcast guest who pauses a lot. So finding those silent gaps is also really great, because if you can just find those and chop them out of there, it makes it feel a lot more cohesive and it flows better, and it makes them sound smarter because you're on top of it. So
right. Well, I mean, we can show how that's customized too. Is, you know, even if you're talking and need to take a long pause, it makes it a lot easier for speakers to, you know, when that's going. So there we go. We've got any.
The custom length too.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, so it makes it really easy, because when you're in the transcript and you see the rest sign, like, it kind of alerts me that I need to keep an eye on that and see how long that is. So
perfect.
And Jenn, real quick, do you ever have any of your summit speakers, do you ever, like, if you're working on a specific segment of your content, do you do you ever share that, like, highlight it and then ask for feedback from the speaker within Descript, or is your workflow such that you get it to a final state and then share it out?
Yeah, I typically just do it all myself and then share it with them after it's finished. But yeah, having the comments feature is handy when, like, you have a co-host or something like that, and you want to say, like, hey, should I leave this in there or something like that? But yeah, for this particular workflow, I don't tend to do that.
Gotcha. Great. So then let's get to the most important question of the day. What does the final webinar look like, Jenn? What you've made your content, you're ready. What happens when you get to the summit process?
Yeah, so I upload the video to the hosting platform that I use. So I've used Vimeo, I've used YouTube, because I have a tool that goes and keeps it from showing all the extra, like, you want to watch this next. But so I upload it to wherever I'm hosting it for that case and add it onto the speaker page. I add their information on there, so, like, links to their website and links to the Facebook group where we have a Q&A thread and stuff like that. And then when everything's all set up and the summit is started, I send out the links to everybody the morning of the day that those sessions go live with a link to them, and they go and they watch them, and we go from there. So it's pretty simple.
Do you have one you could show us, or maybe your last one or this one, or?
Yeah, I can. Let's see. Let me see if I'm pulling up. Hang on. I gotta log into my website.
It's window management, very, very challenging during these days.
All right, let's see. Come on. Yeah, I have them all ready because they're all ready to go for next week. So let me.
So a little preview for our audience here.
Yep. All right, so let's see. Just got to change my sharing real quick. All right, it's going to get a little meta for a second. There we go. So this is an example of one of the pages that I have. So I've got the title up there, the presenter's name, and then I always do a cover page on it so that it looks nice and professional. It doesn't catch them doing something like, because it always seems to do that when they fix the title. So
closed, or
Yep. So I've got the link to her freebie on there, the Facebook thread. I always have on here an option to upgrade so you get access to the replays and everything. So it's pretty simple. Mostly I want them to watch the video and then get the freebie and go ask questions. So that's pretty much what I keep on there. So
yeah.
Well,
here's another great question. Have you ever done a free summit?
Oh yeah, all my summits. Yeah, they're free to join, and the presentations are live for 24 hours a piece. So like for my summits, all the presentations for Monday go live at 8 a.m. and expire at 8 a.m. the next day when the next set of presentations go live. And so then after they expire, people have the option to go and buy the All Access Pass, and that gives them access to the replays and a workbook and transcripts and notes and stuff like that. And so it's kind of a freemium model, I guess is what you'd call it. So
Yeah.
Nice. And so for this upcoming summit, how can people stay engaged, continue to learn more about summits, and perhaps host their own summits?
yeah. So if you're interested in learning more about that, you can go to sellwiththesummit.com, and it's pretty simple. You just go on there, sign up. I'll send you all the information for the summit, and we can definitely stay in touch afterwards. I'm always happy to talk about summits. So,
Well, I know we've had a lot of fun here today talking about them.
yeah, and I'm excited to have Descript on the speaker lineup too. So we actually pulled one of our attendees, and she's going to be learning with you guys on how to actually use Descript to edit her podcast. So she's super excited about that.
Awesome. Yeah, well, we're perfect for podcasts, and turns out we're also perfect for summits.
Yes.
There we go. Thank you, Jenn, for walking us through it. I think that was a really interesting use case. Definitely one that, even as we go back to more in-person stuff, it seems like you're still seeing a demand for
Oh yeah.
These summits even well into the future.
Yeah. I mean, they've been going strong for years, and to be honest, I don't really see them going too much of it. They're going to change for sure. I'm not exactly sure how they're going to change after COVID, but they're definitely going to adapt and everything. So,
yeah, that's a great way to think about kind of future proofing, your content and all that. So,
yeah.
Anything else you'd like to show us before you let us go, or any topics that we left uncovered? Of course, Glenn will Descript support dark mode. You'll have to leave that directly up to our CEO. Take it up with Andrew Mason. He loves to give his email out. So Jay is our boss, the typical host of our webinars. Thank you, Jay, for joining and putting us on the spot. So this is very much a Descript inside joke. But thanks, Jay, for showing up. Jenn, thanks again for showing up today. Anything else we should know, or where can we find out more about kind of what you're up to, what you got going on?
Yeah. I'm at sellwiththesummit.com and virtualsummitsearch.com. And yeah, I use Descript for all my stuff on there too. So
Perfect. Well, thanks so much for joining us. I think that wraps up our presentation today. Thanks, Jenn, for taking the time, walking us through everything. It was a lot of fun. And thanks to all of you for your questions. We will be doing this every Tuesday for the forthcoming future. We've got tips, tricks, common questions coming up. We've got a webinar entirely on music, how to find and use it. So a lot of different topics, maybe even one to use in your next summit. So thanks again. And
thank you guys for having me.
Yeah. Thanks, Jenn.
All right. Well, we'll wrap it up there, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody.